Hi friends, and thanks for joining. In today's video, I wanted to talk about something that you might not really recognize is part of van life. It's something that I don't think everybody really shares on, but is a very real part of the experience, and that is loneliness. Don't worry, it won't be as sad as it sounds. There's actually a lot of good that comes from being alone. So stay tuned and I will share my perspective on loneliness and how I overcome the feelings of being alone, especially as a solo female traveler and digital nomad. So thinking about what it means to be alone and lonely, it's pretty normal. It's safe to say that everyone at some point, whether you're in a city, living in a van, or traveling, you've probably felt alone or the feeling of loneliness. It's part of the human experience. There are a lot of misconceptions about what freedom truly looks like, right? Because you think about being on the road and freedom to do whatever you want to do, and how can you be lonely when you're choosing to do the things you love? But that's a misconception, because the constant freedom can come with some emotional solitude, and that is very valid. There are things like changing places, the lack of consistent community, there's digital burnout if you're working from the road, and then there's also long stretches of solo time if you're out there living very remotely for a while. Those are all common triggers of feelings of loneliness. I just wanted to point out that it's very normal, even if you are experiencing what feels like true freedom. So for my personal story, when I first moved into my van, I spent the first 3 months of my van life in the same city because I was a bit terrified of leaving and not knowing where to go. I had thought about doing the van life for a long time, but it was still that fear of I'm gonna have to go do the thing by myself. And so I did have like a buffer of 3 months to mentally and emotionally prepare myself and decide where my next adventure would be. And I also had the privilege of doing van life with my puppy, with my dog, and he was my main companion at the time. It was quite a lifesaver because I did experience loneliness, but at the same time, I learned to create structure in my life by that experience of having him as well. Yeah, so like I said, I spent the first 3 months in the same city that I lived in. When I first started driving, it was a lot of adrenaline. I was excited about all the activities that I could do. And so it didn't really hit me until maybe about a month of being on my own. I previously only lived with my best friend, roommate, and so it almost felt like living alone. It wasn't the idea of living alone that brought me loneliness, but more so being somewhere and not knowing anyone. I remember I was leaving Colorado, and I think that was the furthest I'd been from a close-knit community where I could just call up a few friends and have someone readily available. And I just felt that there was like this heaviness and this sadness. It was also really gray. My mood is heavily affected by the weather, and I just started crying as I was driving. There were lots of times where I would feel heaviness and start to cry in my van. There are a lot of things that only me and my windshield know. It's just me and the views, the moments of crying, the moments of tears, the moments of heaviness. It did start off with me using music and podcasts to cope with silence. I will also say working remotely and having weekly calls and daily meetings really helped me with my loneliness as well, because I was talking to people every day. But I think one of the reasons why it also felt low is because I hadn't necessarily created a support community. I was mostly texting my friends and not really making calls. But when I started recognizing that I could call the people I love and create active conversations, that really helped. And over the course of a year or two, I built out this playlist of songs that made me feel really empowered. For me, music is a very supportive tool for healing. I love music, and I would always add songs that made me feel happy or empowered and bold and courageous for my solo journey. Whenever I would start to feel like I was getting into my head a lot or overthinking, that really helped me combat those feelings. Instead, it empowered me and motivated me into this journey of personal growth. I did also go to locations where I would find like-minded people and meet friends that way. But I think there's also beauty in me learning to find comfort in that alone time. In the beginning, when I first started my journey and I was trying to figure out what I wanted it to look like, I would plan it around activities or hobbies that I wanted to be better at. So like surfing and going to the beach, the ocean was very healing and transformational for me. And I also found really great support in being surrounded by mountains and finding stillness and peace. I really shifted my mindset to create more beautiful series of adventures instead of living from a place of fear. Some tips I would recommend for coping so that you can thrive in your solo van life adventures like I did is engaging in daily habits. Creating a routine will be instrumental to your experience. Daily markers help keep you grounded. For me, it was meditating every morning, journaling after, and setting myself up with a nice cup of tea. And all of these things as part of my morning routine really grounded me into the space because I knew that no matter where I was, I would still show up for myself in those ways. Also, digital connections. And that's another great habit to keep. I actually engaged in more calls and FaceTime calls. That really is a game changer when you're alone for a long time. Voice calls over text, virtual meetings with coworkers, and then social media actually was really helpful. Throughout my whole van life experience, I was pretty active on sharing the beautiful experiences through Instagram and Facebook stories. I do have a lot of beautiful captures and memories from moments like that too. There's really good opportunities to make friends on the road through Facebook groups, and especially if you're in a van, ambulance, or school bus, there's a lot of van life community and they do a lot of meetups. I personally have maybe only ever been to one, but I have friends who go to them often and have made lifelong friends from them. I think that if you are a nomad or you're part of that traveling community, you will know that people are generally very welcoming. There's a lot of tips that can be shared, resources that can be shared. I also used Bumble BFF once and I made some pretty good friends that way too. So there are lots of ways that you can interact and meet new people in the new places. If you are into movement or maybe spiritual connection, I would spend time in new towns and drop in on meditation classes or yoga classes. These are things that interest me. And so I would go to these places and interact with like-minded people. I wouldn't say I always made deep connections, but it was nice to have conversations with people who also shared similar interests. I think 2 more tips that I would recommend is shifting from the perspective of being alone to being aligned, which is another. And when you're aligned, that means that you are staying true to what is comfortable for you and you're following the path that you want. So you're aligned in the way you want to live and you're aligned in your values versus viewing it as being alone. When you are alone, you are living from a place of disconnection. If you think about it, we are energetic beings and we're actually never truly alone because we're already connected to everything around us. So we are shifting our mindset to being aligned in our purpose and values and in the things that we want. And the last thing I recommend is setting emotional check-ins for yourself. I actually got this recommendation from my therapist, and I got my therapist a little later in my van life experience, but setting emotional check-ins to celebrate your daily wins can remind you of how you are still traveling on that aligned path. Daily wins don't have to be things that are crazy huge. It can just be as simple as I got out of bed today, I brushed my hair today, I read a book today. Celebrating what wins mean for you and giving yourself a little boost and that bit of recognition can play a huge role in shifting your perspective and your mindset on alone versus aligned. I recognized in my experience as a solo traveler for 3+ years was the power of being alone and how it really deepened my relationship with myself. When I was in my van by myself on the road, I would really be there with my thoughts. And I use that as an opportunity to ask myself in the moments what I truly want wanted. And that led me to deepen my skill set, deepen my passions, and develop myself in ways that I probably wouldn't have if I didn't have that time to ask myself, what is it that you really want right now? So I would say that loneliness taught me how to truly listen to myself. And I think that's a beauty that solo van life or solo travel can give you. It'll give you these moments of realizations of the things that you're actually bringing into your day-to-day life, because it'll present you with the habits that you're truly keeping versus the habits that you want to be keeping. So those moments are opportunities for healing, growth, and realization. I know for me in the beginning, there were moments where I realized I was depending too heavily on my digital connection, like social media, because I was feeling alone, and I would start scrolling and find that as like connection, but it was actually just moments of dopamine. Maybe I was commenting or engaging with people, but not in the same way that I needed. And I knew what I needed in that moment was to hold space or have someone hold space for me and have real intimate connections. So I would start FaceTiming my friends versus just scrolling down social media. And that helped me detox from social media a bit. I did turn to social media as a place to share my experiences briefly, but I learned that it was valuable to limit my exposure and time. So now I actually have a 30-minute limit to my social apps. So I can only use it 30 minutes a day every day. And that has been really healing for my nervous system. Okay, the last things that I will say are words of encouragement. If you are going into van life or solo adventure life or digital nomad life and you are going into it alone, you are going to feel lonely and alone, and that is completely normal. That does not mean you're broken. That is part of the journey. So it's very fair to just introduce you to the topic now, or if you're feeling it and you're in it now, just give you a reminder that it's part of the journey and there's lots of beauty and growth that comes from being there, and it does get easier. So don't be afraid of it. Expect it and know that it's completely normal. I also encourage you, if you are living the van life or if you've done solo travel for an extended amount of time, to share what that experience was like. I'd love to know what helps you move through the feelings of loneliness. And maybe if you're curious about van life, would you ever do the solo van life? When I first thought about doing van life, in my brain really thought about doing it alone, especially as a female. But I always thought that if I went into van life, I'd do it with a partner because of how scary doing this alone might be and challenging it might be for me, just a solo girl on the journey. I have actually found so much empowerment, so much growth, and so much beauty from doing it alone. Like I said in one of my other videos, I would probably not want to do it with a partner. I'm really grateful that I did this by myself and not with a partner, because that completely shifted the entire experience for me. Thank you guys for joining, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye for now.